The galaxy had seen many strange species, but none were as unpredictable as humans. On the massive orbital station called Orion's Edge, alien diplomats from 12 star systems gathered for a cultural exchange. They had come to study the newest member of the Galactic Union, the people of Earth. Humans had fascinated them for their bravery, confused them with their emotions, and terrified them with their strange habits. But nothing drew more laughter among alien scholars than the way humans treated food. Rumors had spread across the stars. They said humans cooked the flesh of dangerous creatures, roasted beasts that could tear ships apart, and seasoned them with things that could burn through metal. To most aliens, eating meat at all was primitive, disgusting, and savage. So when Captain Elias Reyes, commander of the human delegation, invited them to a traditional Earth dinner, the entire hall erupted in laughter. One alien diplomat, the blue-skinned Zyron, chuckled and said, "Perhaps they will serve us their own hunters next," and the others laughed even louder. No one took it seriously. They assumed it would be some harmless display, a symbolic gesture from a young species still learning galactic manners. But Captain Reyes only smiled. He stood tall in his dark navy uniform, calm and proud. His voice carried quiet confidence. "You've all shared your finest dishes from across the galaxy," he said. "Now it's time for humanity to share ours." The aliens exchanged glances, some curious, others amused. They accepted the invitation, still laughing, still certain that humans had nothing to surprise them. The next evening, the dining hall was prepared unlike anything the station had seen before. Long tables of polished metal shimmered under golden light. Soft music filled the air, human classical, full of emotion and warmth. The smell of cooking drifted through the vents, thick and mysterious. Even those who mocked the idea found their mouths watering, though they did not know why. Captain Reyes welcomed them personally. He walked among the guests, shaking hands, smiling politely, his human crew working silently behind him. The aliens noticed how calm and precise the humans were. No nervousness, no fear, as if they already knew something their guests didn't. At the center of the room, a large table was covered with a silver dome, sealed tight, steam slowly leaking from beneath. No one could see what was inside, but everyone could smell it. Rich, smoky, and alive. Zyron leaned toward his fellow scholar, Czar of the Crimson Spire, and whispered, "They're trying too hard to impress." Czar grinned. "Let's enjoy their little show." But as the music slowed, the lights dimmed, and the crew stepped back, the laughter began to fade. Reyes raised his glass, his eyes reflecting the soft blue glow of the station's lights. "To unity," he said, "and understanding." Then, with a gesture, he nodded to his chef. The chef pulled the lever, and the dome slowly lifted, releasing a wave of heat and scent that filled the room. Every alien froze. The creature on the table was no common animal. It had scales like molten glass, teeth sharp enough to bite through armor, and claws curved like blades. Its massive head rested peacefully on a plate of glowing garnish. A faint hiss of steam rose from its roasted form. Someone gasped. It was the Ravager of Delta 9, a beast known across the galaxy as one of the most feared predators in existence. It had destroyed colonies, torn through steel, and wiped out ships. And here it was, served for dinner. The hall went silent. For the first time in centuries, alien ambassadors were speechless. Even the bravest of them trembled slightly. Captain Reyes broke the silence, his tone calm, almost casual. "You've all studied the Ravager," he said. "You know how dangerous it is." He smiled faintly. "But where I come from, danger has always been another word for challenge." The aliens stared at him, unable to understand. Czar muttered, You eat this thing?" Reyes replied softly. "Only after we hunt it ourselves." And just like that, the laughter was gone, replaced by awe and fear. The aliens realized they were not sharing a meal. They were witnessing a declaration. Humans did not just adapt to the universe. They claimed it, one hunt at a time. The Feast of Apex had begun, and the galaxy would never laugh at human food again. The Ravager's roasted form still steamed on the silver table, glowing faintly under the lights. No one spoke for several seconds, and the silence felt heavier than the vacuum outside the station. Captain Reyes stood quietly, letting their disbelief sink in. Around the table, alien eyes blinked in confusion, shock, and fear. To them, It was impossible. No civilization hunted a ravager and lived. Finally, Ambassador Czar broke the silence, his mandibles twitching with forced laughter. "This must be a trick," he said. "No human could defeat such a beast. It's a display model, a replica." But his voice wavered, betraying his doubt. Reyes smiled, a calm, almost playful curve of confidence on his lips. "Would you like to see the footage?" he asked. He tapped a small device on his wrist, and a holographic screen unfolded above the table. The projection showed a team of humans, dusty, exhausted, moving through a red wasteland. Their armor was scratched, and their weapons glowed faintly under the alien sun. The Ravager appeared, larger than a shuttle, its roar shaking the sand. The aliens around the table gasped. In the recording, humans didn't run, didn't scream. They moved with strange rhythm and calm. They lured the beast into a canyon, set traps, coordinated with precision. One human even laughed as the creature charged. A blast of plasma fire and smoke filled the air, and when the dust settled, the monster fell. The recording ended with the same human standing over its body, saying, "Dinner's ready." The hall erupted, not in laughter this time, but in disbelief. Czar slammed a clawed hand on the table. "This is barbaric," he hissed. "You kill for pleasure." Reyes's tone stayed gentle. "No," he said. "We kill to survive. We hunt to learn, and sometimes to celebrate what we overcome." He gestured to the roasted Ravager. "To us, this isn't just meat. It's a memory of victory, a story of survival." An older alien scholar, Yellen of the Hark, leaned forward, eyes full of both fear and fascination. "But why eat it?" she asked softly. "To us, consuming such creatures is a curse," Reyes replied. "Because eating what tried to kill us means it no longer can. It's how we remind ourselves that nothing is above us, not even fear itself." The aliens shifted in their seats, some disturbed, others secretly impressed. For centuries, they had considered humans primitive, emotional, unpredictable. Now they saw a species that turned death into a lesson, danger into flavor, and monsters into meals. Zyron whispered. "No wonder they survived so many wars." But Czar still refused to accept it. "You make jokes while facing death," he said. "You laugh while hunting monsters. What kind of beings are you?" Reyes looked straight into his eyes. "The kind that laugh, so fear doesn't win," he said quietly. The chef began to slice the Ravager's meat, the knife gliding through with a metallic hiss. The scent spread again, sharp, smoky, and oddly sweet. Even those who swore they'd never taste flesh felt their hunger stir. Reyes noticed their unease and smiled kindly. "Every world has its monsters," he said. "Ours taught us how to survive. Yours taught you how to fear." He placed a small piece of the meat on a plate and slid it toward Czar. The alien hesitated, staring at it as if it might come back to life. The aroma was powerful, something primal calling deep within. The others watched as Czar's trembling hand lifted the piece closer. He sniffed it once, then set it down, glaring at Reyes. "I will not eat death," he said, his voice trembling. Reyes simply nodded. "Then you'll never taste victory," he answered softly. Silence returned, but it was no longer laughter or arrogance. It was the silence of realization that humans were not reckless, not fools. They were something else entirely, something ancient and terrifying beneath their calm smiles. Even Yellen, the scholar, whispered to her aide. "We mocked them for eating beasts, but perhaps it is the beasts who should have feared them." Captain Reyes stood, raising his glass again. "To understanding," he said, voice steady. But this time, no one laughed. No one mocked. Every alien in that room knew they had witnessed something far beyond dinner. They had seen the truth of humanity. A species that faced nightmares with fire in their hearts and a grin on their faces. And for the first time, the galaxy began to wonder, if this was what humans called a meal, what did they call war? The scent of the roasted Ravager lingered in the air, heavy and unforgettable. Even as the laughter had died, curiosity began to replace fear. The aliens sat stiffly, eyes fixed on the glowing meat that shimmered under the golden light. They had come expecting to laugh at humans, but now they watched them with quiet fascination. Something inside every alien mind whispered that they had misjudged this strange species from Earth. Captain Reyes stood calmly near the table, his expression neutral yet confident. He could feel their discomfort, their disbelief, but he also saw the spark of respect forming behind those alien eyes. He nodded to his team, and one of his officers brought forward a sleek metallic case. When it opened, holographic panels rose from it, flickering alive with images. It wasn't just one Ravager that humans had hunted. There were dozens, across multiple worlds. Each image showed humans working together, setting traps, climbing cliffs, and facing predators that could crush steel. A collective gasp filled the room. These weren't soldiers with massive warships or advanced alien tech. They were explorers, engineers, and scientists. Ordinary humans with courage that made the galaxy tremble. Zar's claws tapped the table nervously as he muttered, "They're not warriors, yet they fight like beasts." Reyes heard him and replied gently, "We fight like survivors." He turned back to the images, showing one of a woman standing over a slain Ravager, holding a burning torch as the stars shimmered behind her. "She wasn't a soldier," he said. "She was a biologist. She was collecting samples, but the Ravager attacked her team, so she made sure it never would again." The room fell silent again, but this time it wasn't disbelief, it was realization. The aliens began to understand that humans didn't see danger the same way others did. For them, danger was a challenge, a chance to adapt, a way to grow stronger. And when they conquered it, they didn't fear it anymore. They turned it into part of their story. They cooked it, shared it, and remembered it with pride. Ambassador Yellen leaned forward, her voice trembling. "You record your hunts?" Reyes nodded. "We record everything, because every victory teaches the next generation what not to fear." He paused, letting the words settle, "and what to respect." The hologram shifted again, showing footage of humans sitting around fires, laughing and eating while massive alien beasts lay defeated nearby. Zar couldn't understand it. You face creatures that could destroy your ships, and you sit and eat beside their corpses? Reyes smiled faintly. "Yes, because fear only has power if you feed it with silence." He stepped closer to the projection, his eyes reflecting the holographic flames. "To us, food is not just survival," he continued. "It's a message that no world, no creature, no nightmare can make us bow." The aliens exchanged uneasy glances, their pride cracking like glass. For centuries, they had seen humans as reckless newcomers. Now they saw a truth that chilled them. Humanity's strength wasn't in its weapons or its technology. It was in its will, in its strange, fearless heart that turned chaos into culture. The Ravager was not a trophy, it was a symbol of what humanity could endure and still smile through. One of the younger alien aides whispered, "They eat the monsters that haunt our legends." And another replied softly, "No, they become the legends." Reyes watched them carefully, seeing the change in their faces. He knew that tonight, humanity had earned something far greater than fear. It had earned respect. But his smile faded slightly as he said, "Understand this. We don't hunt to destroy. We hunt to remember who we are." He looked around the table, meeting every gaze. Because if we ever forget the fear, we forget the courage that conquers it. The holograms slowly faded, leaving the aliens in quiet thought. No one dared to mock anymore. Even Zar, who had led the laughter, now looked down, his arrogance melting into a quiet, unsettled silence. He whispered, "Perhaps humans are not dangerous because of what they eat, but because of what they refuse to fear." Reyes heard him, but said nothing. He simply raised his glass once more and said, "Welcome to the human table." The lights dimmed, and soft human music began to play again. A melody full of warmth, loss, and pride. A song from Earth that carried the voice of every hunter, every survivor, every dreamer. And as it echoed through the hall, the aliens finally understood. This was not a dinner. This was a revelation. And in that moment, humanity was no longer the galaxy's newcomer. It was its reminder of what true strength tasted like. The dining hall of Orion's Edge had turned silent after the holograms faded. No laughter, no whispers. Only the low hum of the station and the beating hearts of those who had just witnessed the truth about humanity. The Ravager's roasted body still rested at the center of the table, glowing faintly beneath the silver light. The smell of smoke and spice hung in the air like a memory that refused to fade. Captain Reyes stood near the table, calm but watchful, his eyes moving across the room. He knew what the aliens were thinking. Disbelief mixed with a spark of understanding. The moment called for explanation, not arrogance, so he spoke softly. "When you see us eat what you fear, you think it's savagery," he said. "But for us, it's remembrance." He walked slowly around the table, his footsteps echoing. "Every meal we cook from a predator teaches us something. It reminds us what we survived, what we refused to run from." Yellen, the scholar from Hark, tilted her head. "So you celebrate your fear?" she asked, confused. Reyes smiled. "Exactly," he said. "We don't hide from it. We study it. We taste it. We turn it into a story." He pointed toward the hologram projector still faintly glowing. "That's why we record everything. Because our children must see that fear can be defeated." He paused, looking at the alien faces. "And once you taste what once hunted you, it never has power over you again." The aliens murmured quietly, their beliefs shaken. To them, fear was sacred, something to avoid, to respect from a distance. But humans saw it differently, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. Reyes poured a glass of deep red Terran wine and lifted it under the soft light. "This drink," he said, "was once made from bitter fruit, toxic before we learned how to tame it. Now it is a symbol of transformation." He set it down gently. "That is what humanity does. We transform." Czar, who had mocked earlier, looked restless, his claws clicking against the table. "You think you can conquer everything," he said, his tone trembling between anger and fear. Reyes shook his head. "No, not everything. But we face what comes. Even when we lose, we face it again and again, until we don't." He stepped closer to Czar, his voice steady but kind. "You asked earlier why we laugh while fighting. It's because laughter keeps the soul awake when fear tries to close it." There was a long silence, and then one of the younger aliens spoke, voice soft and uncertain. "Maybe that is why you survive where others perish." Reyes looked at her and nodded. "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe it's because we refuse to forget that we were once prey too." The aliens looked at each other, the meaning of those words sinking deep. They realized that humanity's strength came not from dominance, but from memory, from never forgetting the struggle that built them. Suddenly, the hall lights dimmed further, and a small projection appeared on the wall, an old Terran video. It showed a village hunter from centuries ago, dressed in furs, standing over a fire while roasting a beast far larger than himself. The recording had no sound, only the crackle of flame and the steady rhythm of his breath. Reyes explained, "That man was one of our ancestors. He didn't have technology or weapons, only courage and hunger." He looked at the aliens. "That hunger, not for food, but for survival, still burns in us." The image faded, leaving silence once more. Then Reyes said quietly, "The galaxy has forgotten what struggle means. Comfort has replaced courage, but humanity still remembers." Yellen whispered, "That is your secret, isn't it? You carry your fear with pride." Reyes nodded. "Yes, because fear reminds us we're alive." The chef stepped forward again, offering plates to the guests. No one mocked this time. No one laughed. A few aliens even accepted a piece, trembling as they brought it to their mouths. When the first bite passed their lips, their expressions changed: surprise, awe, and something deeper. It wasn't just flavor, it was understanding. They felt the fire, the wild, the history of struggle inside the taste itself. Czar lowered his head and said softly, "It's not meat, it's memory." Reyes smiled, satisfied. "Exactly," he said. He looked around the hall filled with humbled beings from across the stars. "This is the lesson humanity brings to the galaxy," he said, his tone calm but proud. "That strength is not in conquering others, but in conquering what terrifies you most." The music returned, quiet and haunting, a song from old Earth echoing through the hall. And for the first time, the galaxy listened, truly listened. The lesson of the feast was clear, that the most dangerous species in the universe were not those born without fear, but those who had learned to live beside it and laugh in its face. The tension in the dining hall was so thick it felt alive. The roasted ravager rested in the center of the long metallic table, glowing faintly like a sleeping beast beneath the golden lights. Its scent filled the room, smoky and sharp, carrying something ancient and wild. The aliens could not look away. Every instinct in their bodies screamed that this creature was not food. It was death itself. Captain Reyes stood still, letting the silence linger. He could feel the curiosity rising among the guests, even those who pretended disgust. The chef moved quietly, his knife gliding across the ravager's skin, slicing thin pieces that shimmered with heat and oil. He placed one on a small plate and slid it toward the captain. Reyes picked up the fork without hesitation and took a slow bite. The aliens flinched as if expecting the man to collapse or scream. Instead, Reyes smiled, his eyes closing as he savored the taste. "Perfect," he said softly, his tone calm, proud, and full of warmth. He turned to his guests. "It's a little spicy this time," he added, and a quiet chuckle followed from his crew. That simple human laughter echoed through the silence like thunder, breaking the fear in the air. Yellen of Hark leaned forward, her golden eyes curious. "You eat this as if it were harmless," she said. Reyes nodded. "Because it is now," he replied. "We took what terrified us and made it part of our story." He gestured to the platter. "Fear dies the moment you taste it." Czar glared at him, though his arrogance was fading fast. "Your kind finds glory in madness," he hissed. "You don't respect the natural order." Reyes turned toward him, calm as ever. "The natural order changes when courage enters it," he said. "Everything that hunted us once became our teacher, then our meal." His words carried weight, soft but sharp, cutting through centuries of alien pride. The humans began to serve each other small pieces, sharing laughter and quiet conversation. They chewed thoughtfully, like people who honored what they ate rather than mocked it. The aliens watched in silence, the sound of forks and quiet breaths echoing through the hall. The smell had shifted now, no longer frightening but strangely comforting. It carried a warmth that spoke of campfires, struggle, and survival. For the first time, some of the aliens didn't feel disgust. They felt something like longing. Reyes looked at Yellen and smiled gently. "Would you like to try?" She hesitated, her trembling hand reaching for the small silver fork. Her people considered eating flesh a sin, but her curiosity overpowered belief. She took the smallest piece and placed it on her tongue. The flavor hit her instantly, fiery, deep, and full of strange emotions. Her eyes widened, her body froze, and for a long moment, she simply sat there, lost in sensation. "It's alive," she whispered, her voice trembling. Reyes nodded. "Every bite carries a story," he said. "Every flavor carries a lesson." Yellen swallowed slowly, the heat fading into warmth. She looked at him with new eyes, eyes that no longer saw a barbarian, but something far greater. "This is not food," she said softly. "It's memory." Reyes smiled. "Exactly," he said. "And now that memory belongs to you too." A quiet ripple moved through the alien crowd. One by one, others began to reach forward, some shyly, others with pride. Even Czar stared at the meat before him, his claws twitching with conflict. For a moment he seemed ready to refuse again, but then he caught the gaze of his aide, a young alien who whispered, "If they can face their monsters, why can't we?" Czar's eyes narrowed, pride fighting against curiosity. Finally, he took a piece, raised it to his mouth, and bit. The room held its breath. The strong warrior of his species, the loudest critic of humanity, chewed slowly. Then his eyes widened, not from disgust, but shock. He tasted not death, but power, a strange warmth spreading through his chest. He set the fork down carefully, his claws shaking. "It tastes of fire," he whispered, "and courage." Reyes nodded. "That's the flavor of survival," he said quietly. The aliens around the table began murmuring among themselves. They no longer spoke of savagery or disgust. They spoke of strength, of honor, of the strange fire inside the human soul. In that moment, they understood something that no speech could have explained. Humanity didn't eat to conquer. They ate to remember they could. The first bite had changed everything. The galaxy had seen human strength before in wars and victories. But now they saw something deeper, a strength that lived in every laugh, every meal, every breath. The kind of strength that could not be built by weapons or power. It was something born in the bones, carved by struggle, fed by memory. And as the humans and aliens ate together for the first time, the universe itself seemed to shift. Because that night, across the stars, The meaning of courage had changed forever. The hall had transformed from a place of mockery into something sacred. The Ravager's remains were nearly gone. Only bones and silver utensils left. What had begun as laughter and arrogance had turned into quiet reflection. Every alien who had taken even one bite now sat still, lost in thought. They could taste not just meat but meaning. The story of a species that refused to kneel before fear. Captain Reyes stood at the head of the table, watching the silent crowd. He didn't speak at first. He didn't need to. The lesson had already settled deep in their hearts. But still, some truths had to be spoken, so he raised his glass and began to talk. "You see," he said softly, "humans don't see danger the same way others do." He looked around the hall, his voice calm, but full of strength. "Where you see something impossible, we see something worth trying. Where you see a predator, we see a challenge." Tsar sat quietly now, no longer sneering or laughing. His eyes were fixed on the bones of the Ravager, gleaming faintly like trophies of courage. He whispered to himself, "We hid from these creatures for centuries, and they invited one to dinner." The realization made his chest tighten. For the first time in his long life, Tsar felt small, not in shame, but in awe. Reyes continued, "When we meet something stronger than us, we learn from it." He smiled faintly. "And then we find a way to stand beside it or rise above it." The aliens listened quietly, their minds breaking old beliefs apart. To them, survival meant hiding, adapting by avoidance. But to humans, survival meant confrontation, not with hate, but with courage. They began to understand that fear was not something humanity erased, but something it embraced. That was their secret, their power. One alien scholar from the far Andrix sector finally spoke. "Your kind doesn't conquer through force," he said slowly. "You conquer through understanding." Reyes nodded. "And through endurance," he added. "We endure everything. Pain, loss, hunger, grief. And somehow, we still find reasons to laugh." The aliens exchanged glances, unsure whether to fear or admire that truth. Yellen smiled faintly. "Perhaps that is why your laughter sounds different," she said. Reyes tilted his head, curious. "Different how?" Yellen replied softly. "Because it is born after surviving storms." The room went silent again, but it was a warm silence this time. One that carried respect instead of tension. The aliens now saw the humans differently. Not as reckless creatures, but as something ancient, something elemental. They had been shaped not by comfort, but by chaos. And instead of breaking under it, they had learned to thrive within it. Reyes turned off the holograms and said, "You think this is about food, but it isn't." He looked around, his voice steady. "It's about identity." He placed his hand gently on the metal table. "Every civilization evolves around what it fears most. Ours just decided to face it instead of running." He smiled slightly. "Maybe that's why we're still here." Tsar slowly rose from his seat, his posture lower, respectful now. He looked at Reyes and said, "You have shown us something no weapon could. The power of remembering what once hunted you." Reyes nodded quietly. "Because if you forget your monsters," he said, "you forget your strength." One by one, the aliens began to stand. It wasn't ceremony, it was instinct. A silent acknowledgement that they had witnessed something profound. Even those who hadn't eaten now understood the message. That humanity didn't just survive in the galaxy. It taught the galaxy what survival truly meant. The chef cleared the table slowly, leaving the polished bones stacked neatly like an offering. Reyes turned to his crew and gave a quiet nod. They had done it, not through speeches or battles, but through a meal. The Ravager's story would spread far beyond the hall of Orion's Edge. Whispered in alien academies, written into galactic history, retold by those who once laughed. As the guests began to leave, Yellen stopped beside Reyes and said softly, "You've changed something tonight." Reyes smiled and looked toward the stars beyond the glass windows. "Not changed," he said, "just reminded them who we are." And as the vast galaxy glittered outside, he added under his breath, "They mock our food because they don't yet understand. To us, every meal is a victory, and every victory is a story worth tasting." The doors closed behind the last guest, leaving the hall quiet once more. The scent of the Ravager still lingered in the air, faint but alive. It was not just the smell of food anymore. It was the scent of realization that humanity's true power came not from their weapons or worlds, but from their will to turn fear into fire and memory into meaning. Long after the lights dimmed on Orion's edge, the story of that dinner began to travel through the stars. What had started as laughter and insult turned into a legend whispered across spacefaring worlds. They called it the Feast of Apex, the night the galaxy saw what humanity truly was. Not conquerors, not barbarians, but survivors who made fear itself bow to courage. In every corner of the Union, aliens spoke of the humans and their terrifying meal. Some told it as a tale of warning, that humans were too bold to fear anything. Others told it as an inspiration, that courage could be tasted, not just felt. But in every version, one truth remained unchanged. The night began with mockery and ended with reverence. Captain Elias Reyes became the name written into galactic archives, not as a warrior, not as a hero, but as the man who taught the stars a lesson through a single dinner. He never sought fame, yet his story spread like fire through cold space. On distant colonies, alien teachers recited his words to their young. Fear dies when faced, they said, and humanity learned to face it long ago. The Ravager's bones were preserved inside a transparent case on the human flagship Artemis Dawn, a symbol, not of violence, but of victory through understanding. Every visitor who came aboard was shown those gleaming white remains, and beneath them, engraved in silver, were the words Reyes had spoken that night. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the choice to taste it anyway. Across the galaxy, something began to change. Species that once fled from predators began to hunt them. Warriors who feared storms began to walk into them. Even traders and scholars started sharing human meals during diplomatic summits. The laughter that once mocked Earth now carried respect, and the simple act of eating became a quiet reminder of strength. Czar, the proud ambassador who had once ridiculed humanity, returned to his world a different being. He shared the story with his people, telling them not about the taste of the meat, but about the fire that lived in human hearts. He said, "They laughed at danger and called it dinner, because fear has no hold on those who break bread with it." His people listened, and their view of humanity shifted forever. Yellen of Hark, the scholar who first dared to take a bite, became the first alien historian to write a book about humans. Its title was simple, The Ones Who Eat Fear, and her words echoed through academic halls across countless worlds. "Where others see death," she wrote, "they see discovery. Where others hide, they build a fire." Captain Reyes never spoke much about the event again. To him, it was just one more chapter in humanity's long story of survival. But sometimes, when he stood by the observation window of the ship, looking at the stars scattered like silver dust, he would remember that night. The laughter, the silence, the first bite, and the moment when the galaxy finally understood. One of his officers once asked him quietly, "Do you think they'll ever forget?" Reyes smiled faintly and said, "No, not anymore." He lifted his gaze to the endless dark beyond the glass. Because legends don't fade. They're retold every time someone dares to face what once frightened them. And so, the legend of the feast lived on, told in stories, songs, and holograms across 1,000 systems. Aliens who had never seen Earth would speak of the humans who hunted monsters and laughed. They would whisper, "Do not mock their meals, for their food is forged in fear, and their courage tastes of fire." Generations later, when new species joined the Union, they would ask about humans, and someone would always smile and say, "Ah yes, the humans, the ones who turned terror into tradition." And somewhere, on a quiet world far from the stars, a young child would sit by a campfire, cooking their first hunt, repeating the words passed down for centuries. "They laughed at our food once," the child would say proudly, "but now they understand. Every meal tells a story." The story of Earth's children had reached every world, not through war, not through power, but through the courage to face fear and call it dinner. And in that eternal flame of survival, the galaxy found its most important truth, that humanity's greatest weapon was not its strength, but its ability to turn even fear itself into a feast.